coming up.
One of my biggest beliefs about technology is not that it affects us, but we affect it.
Twitter,
Facebook,
Goodreads,
Bebo,
LinkedIn,
YouTube,
MySpace.
social networks, reconfiguring the social world, for better or for worse.
One of the great myths about the internet is that it's a substitution device.
Our guest is Malcolm Parks, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks.
I suppose I worry a little bit about people disappearing into virtual worlds, but not a lot. I mean, people disappear into golf. The great river is that people just communicate more in all forms.
Recorded in front of a live audience at Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon.
Social networking, coming up on Philosophy Talk.
After the news.
Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Accept your intelligence. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Today, Philosophy Talk is on the road. We're recording the program in front of a live audience at Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon.
Our thinking originated at Philosopher's Corner on the Stanford campus.
Today's program is the keynote event of Pacific University's 13th Annual Undergraduate Philosophy Conference. We're very pleased to meet some of our fellow philosophers right here in Oregon. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, folks. Our topic today is social networking.
Well, Ken, I suppose we're talking about social networks just because we're doing this show in front of a young, hip audience of college students from all around the world. The kind of people who probably spend hours on Facebook and MySpace, and they know how to tweet or Twitter or whatever it is, and the like.
John, you sound a little skeptical there, dude.
Oh, no, Ken, I just love all of this stuff. I mean, I got a page on Facebook at your urging because we had this Philosophy Talk Facebook community. And I'm really glad that so many people like to follow the comings and goings of Philosophy Talk over Facebook, but for me personally, it's a big pain. People I've never heard of ask to be my friend. Once a month, I log on and I say yes to all requests to be my friend because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Aside from that, I never go there. I mean, why do I want to know if you're walking your dog? Or why do I want to see pictures of some party in Australia that I didn't go to? It's a complete waste of time.
Well, John, a lot of time is wasted on these online communities. I don't deny that. But I think you're underestimating the potential of this stuff. Eventually, social networking is going to change the way we relate to each other in really far-reaching ways. That's what I believe.
Well, so does the mumps, you know. But, I mean, how's it going to do this? I mean, how's it going to help you? It's going to enable you to keep in touch with your so-called friends, people you hardly know or barely remember, or probably some of them have been trying to avoid for years.
Loosen up, John. I mean, loosen up. I mean, you might even find that some of the folks who become your Facebook friends could become your real friends, and they'd enrich your life.
Oh, yeah. What kind of friendship would that be? I'd like to eat lunch, have a beer, shoot some pool with my friends. You can't do that on the internet.
Oh, gosh. Now you're mistaking your own limitations for limitations of the possibility of true friendship. I mean, ever since the dawn of writing, I mean, that was in your time, right? There have been long-distance friendships.
Yeah, I could never get the hang of that writing stuff, you know. Personally, I do find it hard to keep up a friendship through letter writing or the telephone. You're probably right. It has to do with me because I have trouble sustaining relationships, people I see every day. But leaving me aside, do you really think the internet has the power to change something basic about the possibilities of friendship?
You know, I really think it does. And I don't think it's just friendship. all human relations, insofar as they are mediated by the internet, are undergoing a revolution. I mean, think about the way businesses relate to their customers, or the way people like you and me conduct scholarship, or the way groups of like-minded people dedicated to a cause can organize themselves. I mean, it's really a social revolution, and I think we, Philosophy Talk Question Everything Except Your Intelligence, we ought to reflect philosophically on this huge big deal before it overwhelms us, not after it overwhelms us.
Okay, we question everything, we should question that. But will it really affect us as philosophers?
Well, I'll give you an example. Ask yourself, what do we really need publishers of scholarly journals for?
Well, you're kidding. I mean, they have two functions that are really important. First, they certify certain articles as worthy of publication, so we don't have to read everything that everybody thinks is ready. And then they distribute those articles to the scholarly community. I guess I see your point. The distribution maybe isn't a very crucial function anymore, but there still seems to be a role for these journals and for the editors and for the publishers as certifiers of quality.
Yeah, it's an obsolete way of doing business. It was designed for another era. I mean, we can police ourselves as a group. We don't need this outside authority called the publishing industry. I mean, suppose a community of like-minded scholars just decided to form a social network dedicated to reading, evaluating, and distributing each other's work. They would tag, evaluate, and share papers they liked, and the ones they didn't like, they'd tag them and criticize them, and then they'd sort of die out. It would be a bottom-up, self-policing certification system run by the scholars themselves without this outside authority that just makes money off of it.
Your bottoms-up, self-policing certification system run by scholars themselves, A, sounds like a lot of work, and B, I'm not sure it would be an improvement. But you've at least convinced me that we need to think about this.
Well, that's good. And fortunately, we've got a guest who has thought long and hard about the pitfalls and possibilities of social networking. That's Malcolm Parks from the University of Washington. He'll be joining us shortly.
But first, our roving philosophical reporter, April Dembosky, takes a look at social networking by religious groups. She files this report.
There is a lot of God talk in our little corner of the Twitterverse.
Bob Hyatt is the lead pastor at Evergreen Christian Community in Portland. He founded the church in 2004 with the goal of reaching younger Christians. He quickly realized that monthly newsletters and other traditional church communications weren't going to work.
We had no money and no budget, so we couldn't do what churches normally do, which is send out mailers. Being a church of primarily 25 to 35-year-olds, everyone's online. We just began to connect that way.
When new folks come to check out the church, they fill out a simple card with their name and email address. Hyatt takes it from there.
I'll just do a search for them on Facebook, and 9 times out of 10, they're already there. I'll friend them, and they'll say, yeah, okay, that's the pastor from the church we were just visiting or we're just starting to connect with. I think in a lot of ways, it has become a relationship accelerator.
Hyatt has more than 700 friends on Facebook, and more than 500 people follow him on Twitter. He has his own blog where he keeps track of innovative Christian uses of online networking tools, like his friend's Passion Week Twitter series leading up to Easter.
Throughout the week, updates would drop on Twitter that would let you know what had been happening in the life and the trial and the crucifixion, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus, so that you could follow it basically in real time.
Even Jesus has his own Facebook page.
And I have a feeling that it's not just Jesus that has his own page, but probably a lot of other people do as well, including, I think I saw the devil had his own.
There are all sorts of exclusive faith-based social networking sites. Communities are racing to develop a definitive Christian version of Facebook, where pastors have more control over the content and members. But Hyatt says this ghettoizes Christians. He says Jesus wanted his followers to integrate with the secular community.
To engage in the kinds of things that everyone around them is engaging in. So hang out in the pubs, live in the coffee shops, serve on the PTA, and just use Facebook. Don't try to come up with your own Christianized version of it.
Social networking has created a forum for Christians from around the world to get to know each other and expand dialogue around faith. But social networking has its limitations, too.
When I use it to connect with people in Maryland and Canada and all these other places around the world, I think it's kind of cool and there's some novelty to it, but I think there's a cost. I knew I was in trouble when my wife, one night over dinner, asked me, so what's going on? What have you been thinking about? What's been happening in your life? And the first thing that came into my head was, well, haven't you been reading the blog?
So Hyatt decided to take a break. he gave up Facebook and Twitter for Lent.
When you give up chocolate, when you give up beer, when you give up different things, you realize the ways in which you were using those things to soothe, to self-medicate. And because Twitter and Facebook and other things had taken up so much of my mental bandwidth and my imagination over the past few months, I thought this would probably be a good thing for me to take a break from.
After Easter, he slowly worked his way back to the online social world.
I'm hoping to re-engage with them a little bit more thoughtfully and maybe tell my wife some things before I Twitter them.
For Philosophy Talk, I'm April Demboski.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk, coming to you from Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. I'm John Perry, along with Ken Taylor.
And we're joined now by Malcolm Parks. He's a professor of communication at the University of Washington, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks. Malcolm, welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Thank you. Call me Mac.
Okay, Max, so how did you get interested in the issue of online social networks?
Well, it all started in 1993 when my buddy Al walked into my office and walked directly to my computer and said, "Hey, you gotta look at this." And the thing he made me look at, which I'd never seen before, was internet news groups. And I got hooked. And I got hooked both because they were interesting in content, but as a person who studies human relationships, I got hooked because I saw things happening there that all our theories shouldn't say, or would not happen. And so that's like catnip to a scientist, to have the theories disconfirmed. And I had to understand why people were relating to each other as effectively as they were.
Well, I mean, tell me a little more about that catnip. I mean, we've had letters for, I guess, a long, long time, pen pals for centuries, phone buddies for most of the last century, email going on a couple of decades. Do Facebook and social networks really bring something new to the plate, or they just bring too much of the old stuff?
Well, no question they bring too much of the old stuff, but I think they bring a number of new things. For one thing, they bring a lot more information. We now meet people and we have more information about them before we meet them than ever before, and that has both up and down sides. Our networks are more visible to one another. We know who people relate to much more than urban mobile people typically do. There are resources available to us, new ways of organizing ourselves, often on the fly, that have never been available before, and new ways of thinking about who we are as people.
Okay, let's take this a little more slowly. I mean, you said a lot of highly consequential stuff. I mean, take this thing about living out in the open. That is, I can know who your friends are. I mean, it's like displayed. The networks that you're a part of are displayed. I mean, there's been some of that in the past, right? I mean, because you belong to a certain country club, you work in a certain place, you belong to the Elks or the what is that thing you belong to?
Rotary, yeah.
All that stuff. I mean, those are ways of sort of publicly declaring a system of allegiances. I mean, what's really different about this online stuff?
I think what's really different about the online stuff is you don't need to be a part of the group to see it. Being a friend on Facebook is a really pretty minimal designation. It's not like we both got invited to be in the same country club.
Yeah.
And so you look further, and you can keep looking, friends of friends of friends of friends.
Right. So you can find, like these networks are searchable. You can find new people to associate with. It's like we're hungry for people who have, like my colleague Josh has like 2,000 Facebook friends. I think, why does he have all those Facebook friends? But we can do that if we want to.
Well, we can do that, but does it really amount to much? 2,000 friends? What does that even mean?
Yeah, what does friendship mean in this context?
Well, that's a good question we're all trying to figure out, I think. First of all, the friends you have in offline settings are there with you on Facebook for the most part. Friends of friends are there. Lapsed friends are there because there's no reason to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And people from places you don't go anymore are there.
So far, it sounds just like an odd thing. And I was saying in the opening, I think it's a highly consequential thing. Why is it other than an odd thing?
Let me give you an example. One of the things we've learned from research is if I discover that my friends are friends with people in a group that I don't like, I will actually become less prejudiced about that group.
Really? So by my friends having all these associations, that can broaden my perspective. We'll have to chew on that. This is a special edition of Philosophy Talk, coming to you from Pacific University in Oregon. We're talking about social networking with Malcolm Parks, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks.
Relations between casual friends or intimate lovers, between businesses and their customers, among like-minded activists devoted to a common cause. Are they just being reconfigured by the internet, or is there something really new going on? What about face-to-face relationships? Are they being devalued? With so much of our lives being lived out in the open, do we need new ways of drawing the distinction between the public and the private?
Reconfiguring human relationships in the age of the internet, along with questions from our live audience when Philosophy Talk continues.
People I know, yeah, I can creep just like a pro. I poke you, and you never poke back. And when you're on live, you don't never want to chat. I just want to get inside your world. Come on now, you're my Facebook girl. I poke her, and she always pokes back.
Welcome back to Philosophy Talk. We're in Oregon at Pacific University, and we're talking about social networks like Facebook. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Some think that the internet has the power to restructure human relationships, from relationships between casual friends or intimate lovers to business-customer relationships, or even among like-minded activists devoted to a common cause.
What do you think? Is the internet fundamentally changing the way we relate to other people, or is it just giving us more of the same old thing in a fancy new package? And as more of our personal life is being displayed online, do we need new ways of keeping the public and the private separate?
Our guest is Malcolm Parks, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks. So, Malcolm, okay, we were talking about whether this is impactful or trivial. Tell me the kind of human relationships that you imagine will be or have been the most affected by the internet and social networks, and why that kind of
Sure. I think it runs the gamut from casual relationships and in the workplace and politics. I think there's been a huge impact in the way people organize for political purposes, all the way to the other end of the continuum in family relationships. I maintain that the internet is one of the most family-friendly technologies in history.
Well, really? That's a surprising thought. Tell me why you think that.
I think that because, and I bet many of our audience members would think of examples of how you stay in contact more with extended family members now because of the internet than ever before. Why, John told me over the break that he keeps in touch with his grandchildren this way.
Well, do you?
Well, yes, that's true. They're the only reason, aside from Philosophy Talk, that I ever
Okay.
look at my Facebook page.
Okay, right. But that means, okay, let's think about that a little bit. That means instead of calling your grandmother and letting her hear your voice, right, you write her an email, a cold, impersonal email. That's family friendly? It seems to me it takes warm face-to-face or voice-to-voice human contact and turns it into cold, impersonal.
Well, it's kind of relative. I mean, if your grandchildren live next door, and instead of going and seeing them, you send them email, that's not a plus.
Yeah.
If you've been calling them every week, and instead of calling them, you send them an email, that's not a plus. But it may be that calling's too expensive and they live too
Yeah.
far away, and it's hard to find them when they're in, so then it's a plus.
My own view about this, tell me what you think, is that the real potential of this stuff has not yet really been unleashed. Because what I was saying in the opening, I was serious about, that sort of bottom-up social structures, right, divorced from the top-down authorities that have run our lives for so long, are what's really is coming, right? It's coming down the line. I mean, it's already happened. I mean, because imagine, we did a show called Too Much Information. It was about how you don't go to a library and a card catalog anymore, right, with its fixed ossified categories, but you make them up on the fly. You search, you browse at your whim, and you don't have to have the authority of the Dewey Decimal. I think Facebook and other things like that have the potential to just demolish these old structures of authority. Am I wrong
I think
or
you're
right?
right. I think you're right. But I also want to counter something you said. One of the great myths about the internet is that it's a substitution device. So that if we use the internet, that means we're not engaging in face-to-face interaction. And all of the research research that I think I and others have done points that, well, that happens sometimes. The great river is that people just communicate more in all forms. And so in the family, it's not that you stopped calling grandma or never see her. It's that all the pictures from the vacation are up there. You're more likely to go see her. You're more likely to talk to her on the phone, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, John was complaining about the pictures from the party in Australia that he didn't go to and all that
It's just
stuff.
because he wasn't invited.
Yeah, but actually, I think that's kind of cool. I mean, I have these friends who put their whole lives up there. I don't have to do anything to keep up with them. And when I see them, I say, "Hey, that was a great. That looked like a great party you had."
But look, I mean, there is this idea, a very old idea in some philosophical traditions of living in the present moment, at least part of your life, appreciating what's going on and not being so wrapped up in the future, worrying about the future, remembering and feeling bad or good about the past, that you don't live in the here and now. Now, isn't there something to that with relationships too? I mean, my wife, bless her heart, keeps in touch with her friends from kindergarten. I barely keep in touch with people, that were my best friends a year ago. So there's a difference, but it seems to me that there is something to kind of living with the people you're interacting with now and not just taking up all your time with these old relationships.
Well, but I think I have some sympathy for your view. I'm moving towards geezertum too, but
Let me tell you, from the point of view of someone who's already there, it's a very pleasant place.
But the truth is, I think that for more and more of us, the here and now includes these mediated moments. They are real, they are here.
Yeah, moreover, I think it's important that for more and more of us, part of who we are is shaped by declaring ourselves in these public spaces.
Yes.
I mean, it's a theater for identity declaration. And I think that's really important. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're talking about social networking with our guest, Malcolm Parks, in front of a live audience at Pacific University. We'd love to have questions from our live audience. So if you want to have a question, come up to the mics there, and we'll get you in this conversation. And we have a gentleman over here. Tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm Sean. I'm from here in Portland. Go to Portland State University. My question was, in an environment where we choose who we will and won't interact with, isn't there a special danger of a sort of intellectual homogeny where we don't hear any ideas we don't want to ahead of time?
That's a darn good question. What do you think about that one, Malcolm?
I think it's a very real danger. I mean, but it's not just the internet that enables that. Look at how we watch television, look at our reading habits, look at our association habits. We have much more freedom generally to do that.
That's the downside of this.
Yep.
I think there is this percolating of authority from the bottom up and pushing aside the old top-down authorities. But that's the downside of it, because all these tried and true certifiers who said, you got to listen to this, you got to listen to that, we don't need to listen to them anymore. We can choose our sources of information.
Well, just let me give you an example. When I was in graduate school, which wasn't all that long ago,
in the great scheme of things.
Yes, right. Your graduate cohort, at Cornell was, I suppose, eight or nine students. So if you don't count the ones who are off in the library and never see them because they're doing a dissertation, you got about 30 people talking together. And you have to learn a little bit about other people's interests to be part of that group. You can't just say, well, I'm interested in speech act theory as developed by the later Austin in the 2 months before he died, particularly with respect to baseball umpires' calls.
Yeah.
And that's my focus.
Well,
But now you can go on the internet and you can find the 16 other people in the world that have exactly that interest,
Right.
and you never need to broaden your
There you
horizons at
go.
all.
We have more questions from our live audience on this side of the room. I'll go back and forth between the two sides.
Hi, I'm John. I teach occupational therapy here at Pacific, and as occupational therapists, we're very interested in what people do, the activities they do in their life. But in order to do, you have to be first. That's our assumption. And so I'm very interested in the philosophical perspective of the notion of beingness as it begins to merge, through the screen into this virtual world, maybe in a matrix sort of fashion.
Well, I don't know about virtual. I mean, it's virtual in one sense. I mean, I think this is an important thing. I think one of the things that younger people, teenagers and college students flock to, like MySpace and all that in the early days, is because most of the spaces that they occupy are controlled by adults, and the norms are set by adults, and it was this theater of identity formation and constitution that was their own, right? And so I think, I don't know, a deep answer to this, but I think it's an important phenomenon. I think these social networks are theaters of declaring who you are to a world.
In the early days of the internet, I was running a program at Stanford that had to do with people with disabilities and access to information for people with disabilities. And one aspect of this idea I think was very relevant then, which is it's the nature of action that there are many ways of doing the same thing. There are many movements that can be knocking on a door. There are many knocking on a door can be done for many reasons. And one of the great things the internet and computers in general do for people with disabilities was give them alternative ways of doing the same thing other people could do. And at the time, I thought this was a great thing, and I think it was a great thing. I just didn't ever expect it to be something that spread out into the general population so much. But I think that some of the same reasons that disabled people on the whole, so people with certain kind of disabilities like the internet, is the same reason people in general like it. Some people with production disabilities who could only type very slowly, or maybe with voice recognition or with some kind of key they hit, some kind of thing they held in their teeth, found that being slow in producing an email didn't matter anymore.
So Malcolm, what do you think?
It's a generalization of that same phenomenon that you can decide who you are. It's not just all determined by the local attributes that, for most of us, determine how we interact with the rest of the world.
So what do you think? New possibilities for being a person.
I think that people who are stigmatized or disabled or dealing with difficult life transitions or dealing with a chronic medical condition, by and large, easily, the internet has been a marvelous thing for them in terms of finding social support, finding expertise that they would not otherwise have available. I mean, think of if you live in a small town and you have a child with a medical condition that your doctor has never seen. This is marvelous. And yeah, I suppose I worry a little bit about people disappearing into virtual worlds, but not a lot. I mean, people disappear into golf.
Yeah,
you know?
Right. Yeah. We've got lots of questions from our live audience over in this side of the room. Tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm Aaron Frine. I'm from Tacoma, Washington. I want to speak to you. You've mentioned a couple times this breaking of top-down authority, and I'm a little, I don't know, I question that to a certain extent, because in this virtual interface where we're identifying ourselves not by action so much as by the words that we've chosen, aren't we risking identifying ourselves with an idea that, or a word that doesn't really reflect how we would act, but how we think we would act?
Yeah.
And thus, we're risking losing ourselves in the virtual.
No, there's certainly something to that. I mean, there's dark sides and light sides to this stuff. Because, again, the representations over these social networks, are they, as they say in philosophy, veridical? Are they truth tracking? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. How can you tell which are the true representations from the false representations? There's no doubt that that's a problem.
Mac,
It is a
have you
serious
done
problem.
empirical work on how truthfully people reflect themselves?
Probably more truthfully than we worry about, but still, this is a way that gives us unparalleled control over how we present ourselves to other people. We get to choose our photos. Not only that, we can Photoshop them. We can graft friends in and out. We can do a lot of stuff. We can very carefully choose material, edit it, buff it up, make it look good, give ourselves a soundtrack. Incredible control over self-presentation, and flip that over, that means that the information we get is more manufactured, more highly manipulated.
Yeah.
And I think we're still developing skills to deal with that. We're still on a big learning curve.
It's a brave new world. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're talking about social network with our guest Malcolm Parks, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks. And we have lots of questions from our live studio audience. Welcome to Philosophy Talk. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm from Grand Valley State University. That's in Michigan. I would actually comment, maybe that's not a bad thing, the changing who you are. Maybe we already realize that there is this kind of hyper character of ourselves, and that we can have our own hyper character, and maybe even multiple identities on these Facebook sites. So I am Millard Fillmore, and I'm Matt. So I get to use the things that I think Millard Fillmore would like to do, as well as myself, but I get to be a hyper of both of those.
But does representing yourself as so-and-so make you so-and-so? Does slipping on a representation for public consumption actually make that you?
Don't we put on these faces while we go out at the same time, too? So we're changing hats almost every time.
What do you think, man?
That's the $64,000 question. You know, it's...
That used to be a lot of money.
Okay, it's the $64 trillion question, okay, and we have to pay up soon. I think there are, we have always played, particularly in what we call modern societies and postmodern societies, played with identities, played with roles, but there are limits ultimately beyond which you begin to wonder what's you. And I think sometimes we come up to the edges of that in play. And the internet enables us to do that. And maybe that's a good learning experience. I don't know. I think some people have difficulty with it. Many just learn and move on.
So look, we have time for one more question before the break. We may not get to the answer, but give us the question on this side of the room.
Hi, my name is Justin, and I'm a philosophy student here at Pacific University. My question is this: do you think there's a moral responsibility for professional educators to engage actively in social networking?
I don't think it's a moral responsibility. I think it's really interesting. That said, I have very few Facebook friends. That said, one of them came to see me tonight in person. It feels great.
There you go. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're discussing social networking with our guest, Malcolm Parks, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks.
In our next segment, we'll ask whether the potential reconfiguration of human relationships that the internet creates is, on balance, a good thing or a bad thing.
We're coming to you from Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. We'll take more questions from our live audience when Philosophy Talk continues.
I'm hooked on Facebook. I used to meet girls hanging out at the mall.
Welcome back to Philosophy Talk. We're in Forest Grove, Oregon at Pacific University. I'm John Perry, and even though we've got our own Facebook community, Philosophy Talk is still the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor. We're talking about social networking. Our guest is Malcolm Parks, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks. So Malcolm, I want to think about this in a slightly different way. I think maybe culture is just like this. It happens all the time, and this is the latest innovation. There was a time when your parents said to you, don't have sex before marriage, right? I guess Bertrand Russell got fired for advocating that people live together before marriage. Now, you think, oh, don't rush into this thing. You live together before you get married. I mean, your parents would give you that kind of advice. Okay, so the old fixities, culture takes the old fixities and makes them non-fixed and tells you to experiment with what was once fixed. Maybe the internet is saying to us, identity was once delivered as a fixed thing, and now we're going to unfix it, and your job is to experiment. What do you think of that?
I agree with that, actually, and I think it's a great thing up to some limit that we're still kind of discovering. And here's the thing that kind of worries me from time to time. As we get more and more skilled at playing with identities and taking identities on and off, do they get progressively shallower, more easily served, more commodified? Maybe we know people online because the selves are actually a little less there.
But just to stick one thing in here, we mentioned the golfers. Your father's a golfer. My father was a golfer. Bless his heart, golf is a great thing because it gives old people who were bored with the life they've had up to then something they can really sink their teeth into. But it's pretty thin gruel. And so in a way, the internet gives people a lot of alternatives when they're tired of the life they've had for a long time. So that the other end of life, it might be very liberating.
It might be. See, so you old codgers here, see. So we got questions from our live audience. Welcome to Philosophy Talk. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Kevin Landy from Montana State University. There seems to be this distinction in the way that we look at the internet. On the one hand, it's a way of extending existing types of communication, or on the other hand, it creates these new types of communication. So I'm wondering whether we can say one is more correct than the other, whether the internet has it's beholden to the conditions of identity or representing yourself of face-to-face interaction, but maybe in a more impoverished way, or whether it creates new conditions of representing yourself, whether emoticons are just generic facial expressions, or whether they're a whole new type of face that we can have on the internet.
What do you think, Malcolm?
I think the answer is all of the above.
On this side of the room, welcome to Philosophy Doc. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Eric Olmsted from Bethel University in Minnesota. And I guess what I was wondering about is I'm particularly aware of the internet phenomenon of trolling, or where you attack a position merely for the fun of it. And this is really a result of the facelessness of the internet. And in regards to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show about this lack of top-down controls, isn't that even more of a danger?
Oh, God. I think that's a really big thing. I mean, it's the trolling on these on these blogs and websites and all this stuff, and the spam. If you run a blog, God, it's a constant war against these spammers. So look, I mean, with every new social formation, there are guys who try to invade it and disrupt it. And evolution made human beings good at sort of cheater detection and warding out the free riders in the kind of social interaction we had in the Stone Age. But gosh, the modern age is awash with this stuff.
We do not have controls yet, and we're still figuring it out. And that's a big problem. And it's also a problem that we're just inundated with all these sort of totally trivial messages that we can't easily turn off. Not just the attack messages.
Okay, on balance, is this thing good or bad? I mean, is it just flood you with useless information, disrupting your communications and all your endeavors, or is it better than that? I mean,
well, the answer to that, of course, is yes. But I want to go back to the point the young philosopher from Montana made. I think it made a very interesting structural point about action, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have these things you do, and then you invent new ways of doing them, right? So you can produce written material, and they invent the typewriter, and that's a new way of doing it. And first of all, at the beginning, that's all it is, just a new way of doing an old action. But then the new way of doing it takes on a life of its own and creates new actions that you couldn't do with handwriting. And I think the emoticons are the same sort of thing. The emoticons originally, well, just a way of making a smiling face. But they become an art form of their own. And so every technology does this. It's usually becomes popular because it's a new way, a cheaper way, right, a more universal way of doing something everybody was doing before, but then it creates new things.
See, John, so the grouchiness you were displaying at the beginning about this, it's totally misplaced, and given the views that you have about action and all that, because these social networks is a new way of doing something we already did, is interacting with people. But it's a new way with new potential and new possibilities. I mean, I really do believe that...
You know what the emoticon I usually use is?
Yeah, I know. The big frown. Yeah. We got more questions on this side of the room. Welcome to Philosophy Talk. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Carrie Tyrrell, and I'm from Willamette University. My question is, you guys commented earlier that Facebook isn't replacing face-to-face or phone-to-phone conversation. If it isn't, what is it replacing? It takes time. What are we sacrificing? And ultimately, what are the costs?
People finishing their term papers. That's what it's replacing.
The average Stanford student on the average weeknight goes to bed between 2:30 and 3. Yet breakfast in the dorms is still served from 7 to 9, just as it always has been. So I think your generation is basically sleep deprived, and probably the whole world will come to an end because of it before too long.
Mac, you're the scientist who studies these things empirically. Is there actually research on that question?
There is, and the thing that we're giving up is television.
Oh.
That's one of the things we're giving up, but we don't have to give up quite as much. It's not always a straight trade, because most of us watch television, read, listen to music, or do something else in addition while we're doing Facebook and email and all of that other thing. And so we're slicing our attention up into smaller and smaller units, and that has some implications, not all of which are good. But it allows us to manage multiple interactions and actually deal with a lot more information.
On this side of the room.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Lerner, and I'm a philosophy honors major at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. You have discussed the new ability offered by technology to self-moderate ideas and to decide which opinions we choose to read, as opposed to being constrained by the opinions of an authority. And indeed, we have user-modified resources like Wikipedia, but what safeguards do you feel are necessary in order to prevent people from passing themselves off as authorities on subject matter they know little about? And do we risk a distortion of historical fact or otherwise by online communities who are not subject to these regulations?
No, this is an excellent question, and this is the danger of this brave new world. I mean, look, these top-down authority structures had a point. They were the certifiers, as we were saying in the open. They were the certifiers. If that certification machine goes away and is replaced by something more bottom-up, more competitive, dialectical, that's subject to invasion by, trolls and frauds, then we've got a problem. I agree about that, and I don't know how it's going to work. There is no automatic answer, but the genie's out of the bottle. The possibilities of these bottom-up things is there, and it's going to be exploited. There's no way it's going to be controlled by these top-down authorities.
As philosophy students, an interesting contrast is between the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is an online encyclopedia of philosophy, and very non-traditional in that way, but it's organized in a traditional way with topic editors, and all the articles are refereed and so forth and so on, with Wikipedia. Now, we've had the Stanford Encyclopedia going for, I guess, 15 years, and we're doing fine, but we still don't have all the articles we originally intended to have. It takes a long time to get that going. But what you read there is pretty authoritative. On the other hand, Wikipedia, if you want to find an article about me, for example, you're wasting your time on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, but you will find a couple paragraphs on Wikipedia. I don't know if they're accurate. I don't really care as long as they're there. But so you pass up the one for the other. But I think your generation, as opposed to the first generation of users, is going to be pretty sophisticated about that. I mean, if you're working a crossword puzzle, go to Wikipedia. If you're writing an article on something that's relatively obscure and a small group of people care passionately about, like, fox terriers, probably Wikipedia is a good place. If you're writing an article about something like Palestine, it's pretty dicey because there's going to be so much political back and forth among the people who write the article.
You'll be our last questioner.
Okay. My name is Patrick Anderson. I'm a philosophy major at Grand Valley State University, and you talked about kind of the way that it's a way that for a new way for self-expression, but for the viewer of a profile, does it kind of breed a certain compartmentalization or epistemic closure? Like, does the person that you're looking at their profile become just their profile, and that's it? Or is there more to the individual?
This goes back to your shallowness of these identities.
Yeah, that's my concern. Right. That we sort of commodify ourselves. And by forcing ourselves into that category, we encourage people to look at us purely in terms of those categories, hence the epistemic closure.
So instead of having a rich, fulsome identity, we have this thin little thing that we share with the world. But hey, it's something.
In criticizing things like that, we often make the fallacy of assuming that everybody starts off with a big, fulsome identity. Most of us probably have pretty thin, emaciated identities, and what we come up with on the internet isn't going to be that much worse. So it may not be ideal, but it may, for a lot of people, be a very helpful identity tool.
So, Mac, why don't you make one last comment on whatever you like? What are your closing thoughts?
I'm hopeful about the internet, mostly because I'm hopeful about the users. The problems that we've identified tonight, and I think many of us share concerns about these problems, are problems that we're all going to experience. And one of my biggest beliefs about technology is not that it affects us, but we affect it. We make it do what we want it to do for us, ultimately. And so I'm very hopeful that over time, we're going to figure out how to handle these problems of authority structures and certification and relationship shallowness and all of that.
On that note, Mac, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a great conversation, and thanks for coming down from Washington.
Thank you.
Our guest has been Malcolm Parks, professor of communication at the University of Washington, author of Personal Relationships and Personal Networks.
We also want to thank everyone in our live audience for participating in the program. Give yourselves a round of applause.
So, John, you started out kind of grouchy, but I think by the end you were into this. What did you learn today?
Ken, you and Malcolm Parks, our guest, have totally converted me. I'm a big enthusiast now. I'm going to go.
Right.
I'm going to go home and I'm going to take a photograph of myself in a Speedo, and I'm going to circulate it to every one of my Facebook friends. And I want everyone in our live audience to go home and become a Facebook friend of mine and Twitter me or tweet me or whatever the hell it is that you do. Every time you belch or brush your hair or have a thought of any significance.
So you're still...
I am just so thrilled to be part of the Facebook era.
So I see you're still a little skeptical. But don't you admit that there's a social revolution of some kind going on? I mean, it may leave, people of a certain generation behind, but don't you admit there's a revolution coming?
Well, I lived through the 60s and sang a lot of the songs, and I could get up and sing the anthem from Hair. And yeah, things are changing, but revolution, I don't know. Those are pretty hard to come by and mostly pretty bloody and unsuccessful.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just think that it's as impactful as the airplane was on travel. Social networking is impactful on our social relationship as the airplane was on travel, or as rocket ships were on travel. But you know what? This conversation continues on our blog, theblog.philosophytalk.org, where our motto is Cogito Ergo Blogo. I think, therefore, I blog, and our guest, Malcolm Parks, has already posted a blog on our blog, so go check it out.
And you can now download podcasts of our program from our website as well. For the final word, we're going to turn to our own Facebook friend, Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher.
Ian Scholes. The social networking app called Twitter began as a thingy that allowed you to post 140 characters or less statement. Twitter is an acronym. It stands for Typing What I'm Thinking to Everyone Reading. Posts traditionally have been things like, I'm drinking coffee, or a bird flew by, or I just shot my parents. These posts are called tweets. Users of Twitter call each other tweeple. Haters of Twitter are called twaters. There are rules of behavior called twitiquette. For instance, if somebody sends you a tweet, you don't have to tweet back, and you shouldn't be offended if your tweets go untweeted. Twitter has expanded into a valuable business tool as people tweet things like meeting in 5 minutes, or register for conference, or sniper on the roof. And Tweeple use things like Twirl, an instant messenger filter to manage and glean the more important tweets. Tweeters who tweet are part of the Twitterverse. Also, for those who really care about Twitter, there's a podcast called Twooting. And fraud abounds. Tweets by Maya Angelou and Christopher Walken were discovered to be hoaxes. Shaquille O'Neal is an ardent Twitter. However, rapper 50 Cent admitted that his tweets were composed for him by somebody on his staff. Jennifer Aniston recently broke up with boyfriend X in a series because he spent more time tweeting than he did with her. The Dalai Lama tweets. What does all this remind you of? Well, it reminds me of Smurfs. Smurfs, may recall, are blue creatures about 3 apples tall who are more or less interchangeable, though they have names like Papa Smurf, Brainy Smurf, Dr. Smurf, and so forth. There's even a female Smurf called Smurfette, who does not resemble Jennifer Aniston. With Smurfs, as with Tweeple, gender issues and sexuality are not major ingredients in the social milieu. It's all about language. In Smurf world, everything is Smurfy or Smurftastic or Smurfing awesome or totally Smurfed. What is being said is less important than the insistence that what is being said conforms to a general Smurfiness, if you will, or in the case of Twitter, Twittertude. So we can be hard-driving loners, rugged individuals. At the same time, we can join a collective, be part of a like-minded community, united not so much in what we believe, but in how we talk about it, about whether or not we have achieved true Smurfiness. So I tried Twitter, and frankly, I just don't get it. Even in the so-called useful applications of Twitter, at large conferences, say, when tweeters can tweet responses to a presentation to each other in so-called real time, wouldn't you be better off just paying attention to what was going on, thinking about it, and posting a response, later? Must everything be mediated all the time? So regarding Twitter, my advice, smurf the smurfing thing. It's totally smurfed. If you know what I'm smurfing, and I smurf you do, I got a smurf.
Are you recording me? Oh. I can't hear the snare. Count me in. Twitter. Where do I go when I don't have a friend? Where do I go at another day's end? Nobody loves me, somebody loves me on Twitter. I think I'm a big, big loser. Then I go to my computer, turn it on, and I feel grand. All because of Twitter. Direct message me. Please, please message me. Or at least reply to my Twitter. Tweet, 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 Twitter.
Philosophy Talk is a presentation of Ben Manila Productions and the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University, copyright 2009.
Our executive producer is David Demarest. Special thanks to David Boersma, Philip Creighton, the Elise Fund, Maggie's Buns, and the Philosophy Department at Pacific University.
Also thanks to Mark Davis, Corey Goldman, Jennifer Jensen, Merle Kessler, and April Demboski.
Our production coordinator is Devin Strolovich. Daniel Elstein and Cole Lay are the directors of research. Leo Weiss is our webmaster.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes from various groups at Stanford University, the Friends of Philosophy Talk, and from the Templeton Foundation.
And from the members of KALW, local public radio San Francisco, where our program originates.
The views expressed or misexpressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our other funders.
The conversation continues on our website, philosophytalk.org.
I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.